Hello, something different today, a little bit different, some radiology. I've got a sequence of CT images, high-res computed tomography. That means that these are produced by X-rays firing through the body from a number of different directions, and the computer kind of compiles all those slices and builds up the 3 dimensions of the body so that we can look inside the body without actually having to, take the skin off and all that sort of thing. The thing here with anatomy is that we've looked at, and I've got a model there, we've looked at the structures in the thorax in the model. It's a good exercise for your brain to do a little bit of work if we're looking at transverse axial sections of the body, it's a good little exercise for our brains to try and work out what is that circle there? What's that longer shape there? What's this here? That's the vertebra, and so on. It's just making you work helps you retain that information. You're working these things out. Also, of course, if you have to work with radiological images, this is a bit of a primer and gives you a head start. The image sequence that I'm using is in the public domain and it's on Wikimedia Commons. So in fact, I can put a link to this below, and if this page still exists in the future when you're looking at this, you can also scroll through these images. So what we've got is, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the image, careful, I'm going to need to use patience left and right, but in the bottom right-hand corner of the image as we're looking at it, you can see a yellow line, and that shows you the level that we're at. You will also hear banging and drilling because they're building a new pharmacy department. Anyway, you can see that I can scroll up and down, and as we scroll up and down, we look at different transverse sections at different levels of the thorax. So our job is to work out what the things that we see are. And look, even though it's a flat 2-dimensional image, as we scroll up and down, if you follow, say, this, you get an idea, maybe, of its shape inside your head. So we'll work out the major structures, not all the super minor detail stuff, but the major structures. All right? First of all, then, we need to orient ourselves. Now, there is a standard way of approaching this. Here is the vertebra. So this is posterior and this is anterior. So this is the back of the person. You can actually see the curve of the surface that they're led upon. So this person is led down, face up, and their feet are coming out of the screen towards me. The feet are always coming out of the screen towards you, towards the viewer. So then this is the left side, this is the right side. So as I scroll down, we're moving towards the feet, we're moving out of the screen, and as I scroll up, we're moving towards the head, we're moving deeper into the screen, all right? So, and that's important because the structures in the thorax are asymmetrical. The aorta goes towards the left. The superior and inferior vena cava are a little to the right. So that is a good head start, right? Okay, so another good head start is, this is a CT scan, so it's formed by X-rays, as I said, which means that radio-opaque structures are white, so bones are white, and air spaces are black, because X-rays travel through air very easily. And we've got this black tube here, and we're up at the level of the neck, almost, the start of the neck, because we can see the clavicles here. So what is this? What is this airspace, do you think? Now let's scroll down. You can see the lungs appearing here, the other dark spaces. Now let's scroll down, and you're just going to follow that black circle, which is obviously a tube. Oh, so, and then it splits into other tubes and other tubes and other tubes and other tubes. Incredibly cool. So at this point, this then is the trachea. So we're up into the larynx here. So trachea, and then the trachea is going to bifurcate into left and right main bronchi, and look how one main bronchus runs a little bit flatter than the other one. Got to think about your cross section here. The tube is doing that, so it's looking long, and the other one is steeper. And then moving towards each lung, and then as we continue down, you can see more branches, so the lobar branches, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on, and then they get so small that they disappear and become part of the lung. So that's the trachea. If I scroll back up again. So that's a really good landmark for you, isn't it? And if you're looking at MRI scans, which have more detail, but can look different in terms of levels of grey, depending upon whether they're T1 weighted or T2 weighted or what have you. But still, look at the lung, look at the trachea. There should be a similar sort of colour. So the trachea, there's a good landmark. Okay, now we can recognise the trachea. We know that there are a number of blood vessels up here, major blood vessels, and we can see these circles. So these are all cut sections through blood vessels, and there are arteries and veins there. The veins are closer to the surface. We've got the brachiocephalic veins, which are going to become the subclavian vein. Sorry, well, we should talk the other way around, shouldn't we, for veins? So the subclavian veins and the internal jugular veins are going to join to form the brachiocephalic veins, which are going to come together and form the superior vena cava. And the left brachiocephalic vein has to come across further because the superior vena cava is a little bit on the right. I don't know why I've started with the veins, because they're like the hardest ones to to recognise. Maybe because if we get these nailed, then we'll be golden. But can you see, right, so these are the bones here, right? So these are the most superficial vessels. Look here, I can just about see, maybe if I can tweak the contrast a little bit. Can you see, is that believable? So we know that the brachiocephalic veins kind of start just deep to the sternal heads and then go in a bit. So what we're seeing there, closest to the bones, are the brachiocephalic veins forming, and then watch them as we descend, watch them come together, and that left one has got to come across all the way from the left to meet the other one, and now we've got this structure here. They've come together to form that structure there. If I go back up, can you see? So we're kind of starting here, and oh, where's the other one? Here. Watch those two coming together, they're meeting, and they've come together as a single vessel here, and then as we descend and follow that single vessel down, it kind of disappears as we're now getting into the heart. So that is the superior vena cava. Now, the superior vena cava is a little bit over to the right side, because it's going into the right side of the heart, which means that the left brachiocephalic vein is going to have to come across further than the right brachiocephalic vein. Let's bear that in mind. Then let's also bear in mind that the veins are more superficial than the arteries. And, you know, they're a little bit squidgy in shape, a little bit less round. The arteries then are rounder. Now I want to go the other way, probably. All right, I'll tell you what I do. See, if I see that level, and if you look at radiographs a lot, you'll get used to this, but if I look at that level, I can see, ooh, aortic arch. Great landmark for me. This here, this is the aortic arch. And that then is the superior vena cava. Because if I scroll down, so I'm descending through the thorax, we can see a circle here, right next to the vertebra, just to the left. And indeed, if I descend all the way through the thorax, that circle stays there, bum, 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 until it finds a gap posterior to the diaphragm and goes into the abdomen. So this circle here, this is the descending thoracic aorta. I'm scrolling back up again now. Bum, 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 bum. So it's going to become the arch of the aorta, or rather that's where it's coming from. Ah, there it is. And then, so there's the arch of the aorta. So as we go up, it gets super duper thin. And then as we come back down again, this then is going to become the ascending part of the aorta. So keep watching this here. So this is going to be leaving the left side of the heart. There we go. So now we're into the heart. You can see the chambers there. Scrolling back up, watch out for it. There's the ascending aorta. It goes up. It's going to give off some coronary arteries. I'm not going to identify here. It goes up, becomes the arch, and then drops down. The other side is the descending aorta. So it's important to recognize the arch of the aorta on this level, and it's then also important to recognize at this level that the aorta appears twice, the ascending and descending aorta. Okay, so clavicles, take this off. As I said, the veins are superficial to the arteries. There's the internal jugular vein, subclavian vein on the right side, coming together to form the right brachiocephalic vein. Here it is on the left side. Look, it's got to go across quite a bit further. So because of its shallower angle, it looks a different shape when you cut a section through there. They come together and form the superior vena cava here. The aorta then, here's the ascending aorta, leaving the heart, and then it loops. We can't really see too well, but it's the arch of the aorta then is curving over to the left and posteriorly, and then it runs to the left and a little anterior of the vertebral bodies and down there, right? We can see the airway and its relationship to it. So we take this 3D stuff, we get hold of it inside our heads, we look at a two-dimensional image and we apply it and we try and work out what's what. Look at this, here's another muscular tube here, right next to the aorta. So the trachea will end at this level. This tube will continue down here, next to the aorta, and this tube is going to go to the left as it goes through the diaphragm. So this is the esophagus. I wonder if we can see that on the images. Let's go back up high again. Let's follow the trachea down and see if we can see any sign of the esophagus. So it's very indistinct. Oh, a little bit of gas in it there, look. Keep going down. So we're watching the trachea, the esophagus is here, the vertebral bodies, and the descending aorta is going to appear here. Let's keep going. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, you still got an eye on it? Can you still see it? See it? See it? See it? Oh, it's opening up now. So that's a good one, isn't it? So the esophagus, you know, it can get squeezed closed. It could have a little bit of air in it. So there's the descending aorta, vertebral body, esophagus. The trachea has now become the main bronchi. If we continue descending, oh, it's kind of disappeared. Oh, there it is. There it is. Now it should go to the left, shouldn't it? It should. Difficult thing to say with anatomy, it should. Anatomy is what anatomy is. It's not what it should. Ah, there we go. You can see it there. Yeah, so here, and there's the esophagus, there's the descending aorta. We're coming up on the diaphragm. And as we go through the diaphragm, look, the esophagus is moving over here. Now we're getting into the air spaces of the stomach. So we can see the esophagus too, we can recognise the esophagus. Right, scroll back up to the top. And we'd better do the branches of the arteries from the arch of the aorta, I should think. Okay, so what are we looking out for? Well, you can see the arch of the aorta curving over to the left. We have the first branch is this brachiocephalic trunk, so it's going to be posterior to this vein. The brachiocephalic trunk is going to go from the arch over to the right, and it's going to divide into the common carotid artery and the subclavian vein on the right. So we need to look for the brachiocephalic trunk if we can. That's going to be at a bit of an angle. And then the second branch is the left common carotid artery, which is going to go almost straight up. So if we cut a section through that, it should look pretty round, right, in most of those levels. And then the third branch is the left subclavian artery. So that starts going up fairly straight, and then at some point it's going to go It's going to go off to the left to get to the left upper limb. So when we cut a section through that, that's going to change its shape, isn't it? That's what we're looking out for. Right, we're back at the top. Back at the top. Here's the trachea. Here are the lungs starting to form here. Now we've already found the veins, so we're looking for some nice circular structures forming, aren't we? And we're kind of looking for 3 of them. How are you doing? Right, remember, landmark? That funky shape there, like that bean, like a jelly bean, at this level of the thorax, is the arch of the aorta. So if I scroll up, ooh. If I scroll up, we can now see 1, 2, 3 circles. Haha, maybe that's what we're looking for. Should we follow this circle here? So is this then, because this is the right side, is this the brachiocephalic trunk, do we think? Let's follow it up. Oh, yeah, I reckon I got money on it. Oh, it's starting to divide there, can you see? It's starting to divide. Now we've got 2 circles. So I'm jogging up and down a little bit there. Oh yeah, and this one is changing shape because it's starting to go off this way to the upper limb, but this one is staying round. Oh, which one was it? It's scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. So this is the brachiocephalic trunk. Ding, 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 ding. Split. So I reckon right subclavian artery, right common carotid artery. Look at them go. So if I scroll back down again, so again, we're looking over here. Scroll back down again, look at those 2 come together, form a single vessel, and then as we go down, boonk, they're coming off the arch of the aorta. Pretty cool, huh? Now, so the next one was actually we can look for the next 2 together, the left common carotid artery and the left subclavian artery. Look at these 2 together. So, arch of the aorta again, scrolling up. So to get into the top of the arch, the superior part of the arch, we're seeing a vessel here, we're seeing a vessel here. Yeah, look at those 2. Nice and round and right next to the trachea. That one is closest to the lung. It's changing shape because it's changing direction, because it's going to the upper limb. That one is staying round because it's still going up. And that fits what we were expecting. We were expecting the first branch to be the brachiocephalic trunk, the second branch to be the left common carotid artery, and the third branch to be the left subclavian artery. And if we follow either of these 2, scrolling back up again, that's where they go. All right, so if you have a section at this level, I'd like you to be able to recognize the trachea and then see these 3 pretty well defined circles closest to the trachea as being arteries because they're deeper than the veins. And then think, well, brachiocephalic trunk first, then left common carotid artery, then left subclavian artery. Boom, boom, boom. All right? Look what we can see. And the veins are closer to the bones. Pretty good. All right, what's left? Well, there are a couple of things left. And you can see more on these than what I'm showing you, but I'm showing you the major structures. You know, really skilled radiologists and radiographers will see a lot more than what I'm seeing here. But we can also see the pulmonary trunk. That's another landmark sign for me. And the 2 pulmonary arteries. We might be able to see the pulmonary veins. And the inferior vena cava. Although remember that the inferior vena cava goes straight into the heart, and the heart is sat on the diaphragm, and the inferior vena cava is passing through the liver. The liver surrounds it, really. So we go from liver, as in if we're following the inferior vena cava, we go from liver through the diaphragm and then straight into the heart. So we're going to have to be considerate of that. And then the pulmonary trunk, so if that's the aorta, the pulmonary trunk is to the left of it, but look at that shape. So the pulmonary trunk doesn't go up, it goes up a little bit, it goes posteriorly. So it makes that curve, and then we have left and right pulmonary arteries. So that's the shape we need to look for in transverse section. There's the superior vena cava, the aorta, and then the pulmonary trunk. But the pulmonary trunk is inferior, it's certainly at a lower level, to the to the aortic arch. I need more coffee. Right, let's see if we can find all those. Okie dokie then, so go back to the top. We're going to scroll down, following the trachea. There's the arch of the aorta again, scrolling down. There the trachea bifurcates into the two main bronchi, and we're seeing something happen there. There's the heart. So if I scroll back up, can you see the thing that's happening there? So this is anterior. This is the thing that's happening here. This is the shape, the Y, that I look out for. So sometimes it's quite a bit more distinct on MR, but this here and this CT could have a bit more contrast even. But this here, this Y shape, yeah, do you see that? That Y shape is another thing that jumps out to me. If I see that Y shape in a transverse section across the thorax, I think, aha, that's the pulmonary trunk, because it's doing that. And then it's giving off the left and right pulmonary arteries. That's the Y shape. So I said, this is the left side, this is the right side. I hope I've been consistent all the way through. Like I said, I need more coffee. I might have made some mistakes. The feet are coming out of the page. This is anterior, and this is posterior. So this is the pulmonary trunk going from anterior to posterior, and then giving off the left pulmonary artery to the left lung. This is the pulmonary trunk going from anterior to posterior and giving off the right pulmonary artery to the right lung. And as we would expect, this is occurring very close to where the trachea splits into the two main bronchi. Tell me this isn't the coolest thing ever, right? Medical imaging, it's the coolest thing ever, there is no argument. Okay, so pulmonary arteries now, pulmonary veins, well, so anterior heart, if I turn this around, these are the pulmonary arteries up here. Remember, they're blue because they're carrying poorly oxygenated blood to the lungs. The pulmonary veins are just inferior to them, but they're smaller and there are more of them, and they're coming from the lung into the left side of the heart. So they're going to be inferior to the pulmonary arteries, but they're going to be less distinct. And whenever we're dissecting, what we see depends very much on how far away we cut from the heart. So if we only go a little way away from the heart, or a little bit further, there are lots of pulmonary venous vessels all coming together still. And if we cut really close to the heart, then we start to see like a pair of pulmonary veins on either side. So that's what we're looking for, and it might be a bit indistinct. Scrolling down. Pulmonary trunk, pulmonary arteries, so a little bit inferior. You know, we're seeing things, aren't we? There we go. So, scrolling up, there's our Y of the pulmonary trunk. Scrolling down, we're getting some hints of the pulmonary veins coming in there. If I scroll back up again, see them coming in. Okay. So pulmonary trunk, pulmonary arteries and pulmonary veins. The last thing we wanted to find was the inferior vena cava. So if I scroll down, if I go all the way down to the diaphragm, down, diaphragm, there we go. Go through the diaphragm, certainly a little bit anyway. This is the right side, so this is the liver. And we're starting to see some other structures of the abdomen here, which we'll do another time in a different video. But follow the liver up here. So I said the liver surrounds the inferior vena cava, and we know that the inferior vena cava is pretty posterior. Can you see anything on there that you think might be the inferior vena cava? Whoops. Anything on there? Let me scroll up. I'm going to scroll up. Scrolling up. Now that there is the aorta. There's the esophagus. So here, yes? So here's the heart. This is the right side. So the inferior vena cava, scrolling down. The inferior vena cava is going to go through the diaphragm into the right side of the heart. We've got a lot of soft, wet tissue here, so we haven't got a great contrast between structures, have we? But if we scroll up, 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 we've got very little contrast, so it's difficult to tell what's what. Up, 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 up. We've got something here. We've got a distinct structure, a little bit squished, that then goes into the right side of the heart. So at this level here, we're looking at the inferior vena cava. Down, there's the diaphragm, up, bum, 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 and into the heart. Now, if we look in the heart, I said this was the right side and the left side, you can kind of see different ways of imaging this will show you this a little bit differently, but you can see some of the chambers of the heart, but I'm not going to go into that today. I think we've done more than enough. So, yes, you can do this yourself, and it's really, really good fun thing to do. Scroll up and down, have a look through this sequence of images, and try to take your three-dimensional knowledge of the body and apply it to essentially what are a series of two-dimensional images. And you don't have to look at it in transverse section, you can look at it in sagittal section or whatever. But have a look and have a work through these and see if you can recognize these structures. And if you're going into a profession where you need to be able to recognize these images, the more you look at them, the easier it becomes, right? It becomes second nature and you just start to recognize stuff. Okay. See you guys next week.